guys, welcome back to another video. So the last couple of days, this entire FTC versus Microsoft court case has given us more inside information, I would say, as gamers that we would have never seen if it wasn't for this acquisition. Nothing I've ever can recall in my history of gaming, which has been almost my entire life, to have all of this information and seeing the inner workings between two major competitors, which is Xbox and PlayStation. We got a lot more on this yesterday. And one of the biggest things that has always been talked about with this acquisition is how is Xbox what are they going to do with PlayStation? Are they going to keep the games on PlayStation? How are they going to treat those games? They've offered the 10-year deals. We know that they have continuously offered the worldwide free license for Call of Duty to anybody who really wants it. And there was a whole lead up to this 10-year deal initially where Xbox had offered PlayStation deals, I believe 3 years, and then they had offered them 5 years. And all of those terms just weren't good enough for PlayStation, where Xbox ended up on a 10-year deal. Now we kind of have some information here as to what happened with an exchange between Jim Ryan and Phil Spencer. He writes a relatively long email here to Phil Spencer, and he outlines 3 guiding principles that he wants to dictate in terms of receiving Call of Duty and Activision games on the PlayStation platform. So his first principle is, he says it here, that the commitment of availability of Call of Duty and other Activision games on PlayStation must be sufficiently broad to fully align with gamers' expectations, and that to do the right thing for gamers is not enough to represent that a particular selection of older titles will remain on PlayStation. He wants the entire catalog of Activision Blizzard games on PlayStation and those games to stay there. That's essentially his first principle. The second term of the proposal is, he says here, is designed to advance the second principle, which means unequal treatment of Activision games in subscription services will lead to unequal availability of these games. And he's focusing on the subscription services and saying here, as long as you agree to the fundamental principle, Activision games should not receive unequal treatment on the party's subscription services, we are open to further discussing the details. Then you got the third term here that is saying here that the proposal simply recognizes that the reality upon completion of the acquisition of Activision, it would not seem to make logical sense for the financial, marketing, and other arrangements previously negotiated between SIE and Activision to continue to apply in the post-acquisition world. Obviously, focusing specifically on the marketing deal that they have with Call of Duty. If this deal does pass and go through, they're not going to have a marketing deal with Call of Duty anymore. It's going to be all marketed on the Xbox platform, and he's recognizing that here in the email that won't be going forward. But where it gets super interesting is after he outlines his principles of how he wants Activision Blizzard games delivered on the PlayStation platform, he brings up Bethesda and essentially is trying to negotiate with this entire Activision thing, getting a better deal, I guess, for Bethesda games. He says, regarding Bethesda, I was making a more general point during our discussion. The equal treatment of Bethesda games would be a logical subject to the parties to discuss because it would involve some of the game's concerns as the availability and or unequal treatment of Activision games. We would welcome discussing this subject as part of an agreement that advances the 2 fundamental principles discussed above. And I think the reality of the situation is he's sitting there and he's thinking about a game like Starfield, knowing that that game is going to be showing up on the PlayStation platform. And probably as the market leader sitting there, knowing that Xbox has to do a bunch of remedies in order to try to get this deal passed, thinking that he would be able to leverage that and get a sweeter deal when it comes to getting more Bethesda games on the PlayStation platform and potentially negotiating that future games like Starfield would end up on the PS5. So it's interesting to see Jim Ryan and PlayStation try to wield their power as a market leader ahead of Xbox to try to get a more favorable deal for them when it comes to the Activision Blizzard games and ultimately Bethesda games. Now, again, this is before the 10-year deal was actually offered to PlayStation. This was an email written from Jim Ryan on May 26, 2022. And then Phil Spencer actually replies to Jim Ryan on August 26, 2022 and says this: thanks for your response. As I stated to you in my emails and on our calls, Sony is an important distributor of Activision content, and we would like to find a way to maintain that relationship once we've closed the Activision acquisition. I continue to stand behind the written agreement I sent you on January 31st, 2022 with my signature memorializing our commitment to Sony. The agreement would keep all existing Activision console titles on Sony, including future versions of Call of Duty franchise or any other current Activision franchises on Sony through December 31st, 2022. So they are keeping every Activision game that's currently on the PlayStation platform and Call of Duty for 10 years. That's what their plan was. Sony obviously hasn't agreed to that deal because we've seen what Jim Ryan has said, that he just wants to block this deal, even though he knows the deal is not about exclusivity. And Phil Spencer mentions in this email about keeping those games on the platform, but then says it is hard to align with the principles set out in your email of May 26, 2022, with Sony's leading role in the market. So, I mean, right there, this is probably where the talks fell apart between Xbox and PlayStation. And then Jim Ryan goes out there and says, we just want to block this deal at the end of the day, as they are not going to comply with our demands as the market leader. And you can clearly see that going on here between these email exchanges. And I'm sure there are more email exchanges after this, or maybe this was the last time they talked, but this, I think, is what it was going on. And then after that, we saw the whole 10-year stuff. We saw the whole dramatic scene with Brad Smith holding up the offers and saying that they were here to negotiate with PlayStation whenever they want to put pen to paper. But these emails are extremely interesting, in my opinion, if you've been following the gaming industry and you just kind of want to see how the inner workings are between these two major competitors. They're very business-like. You can tell they really aren't friends in the way that they are writing to each other. So there really is major competition between Xbox and PlayStation, and the entire console wars thing, it is real. I mean, ultimately it is real. I know people like to say that it is just a fanboy thing, but you can see here there is a battle going on between Xbox and PlayStation, and we're seeing it all throughout the entire court battle as well. Now, when it comes to this deal and the decision that is going to be happening with the FTC, it looks like we have this report here from Seeking Alpha saying that the judge in the FTC suit to block Activision deal could rule as soon as next week. So we have the 28th, which was yesterday. Then there is also the 29th, which should be the last day of these hearings. And then by next week, we are going to hear whether the preliminary injunction is granted and the FTC, whatever comes next from that, whether Microsoft has to go back and renegotiate the deal. Bobby Kotick, I believe, did say yesterday that if the preliminary injunction is granted, they're going to walk away from the deal. Whether that is something that truly will happen or not is yet to be foreseen. But it is getting very close here to the final bell as to what is going to be going down here between the FTC and Microsoft. Now it says here, the judge who is presiding over the FTC attempt to block Microsoft's $69 billion acquisition of Activision could rule as soon as next week. The judge has called for findings of fact by June 30th. So tomorrow, leading some to believe the U.S. District Judge Jacqueline S. Corley could rule on the case as soon as next week. I mean, I hope that they rule on this as soon as next week. I hope that we rule on this as fast as possible, because it has just been going on way too long. And I've been making lots of videos reporting it, trying to bring you guys the news and keep up to date what is going on. But I will be just absolutely happy once the decision is made and we can focus on some other things as well. Because I mean, there is lots of other gaming news out there, and I do try to keep you updated on that as well. But this has literally been dominating the entire headlines. It'll be great to see this one come to an end, especially in the FTC. And then there'll still be the wait, I guess, for the appeal in the UK with the CMA. Now, there is some more stuff here when it comes to what happened yesterday in court. Specifically, Satya Nadella had some stuff to say when it comes to exclusivity. And he was asked about exclusivity and all that type of stuff. And this is what he says. If it was up to me, I would love to get rid of the entire exclusives on consoles, but that's not for me to define, especially as a low share player in the console market. The dominant player there, Sony, has a defined market competition using exclusives. So that's the world we live in. I have no love for that world. And, you know, what he is signaling here, I would say, is showing they don't have that incentive to keep Call of Duty or any of these Activision games locked to the Xbox console. But I would say they do have the incentive to keep some of these games locked to the Xbox ecosystem. Now, we know they aren't doing that with Call of Duty, and we know they aren't doing that with a lot of the Activision catalog that is currently available. But going forward, when you look at what happened with Starfield, it's obviously extremely advantageous to have a game like that locked to your ecosystem, although the game can be played literally everywhere. And I've always said, when it comes to exclusivity, Xbox is the best place for gamers to have exclusive content because if they aren't locked to a singular box, they aren't locked to having to go out and buy a specific piece of hardware to play it. They can play it literally anywhere. But there's still obviously that incentive to have that. And I think he's kind of trying to make it look like he doesn't like exclusives at all, because he is focusing specifically on console. But going forward, we will see ecosystem exclusives absolutely between Xbox and PlayStation. Even if the entire console exclusivity thing goes away, which I think will go away, even on the PlayStation side, we will start seeing first-party games released on PC at the same time that they are released on the PS5. There will still always be that exclusivity of the platform ecosystem that you play on. But that was just an interesting quote from Sadia. He knows the more people that get access to a game, the more money you can make. So locking games to a console is not a win for Xbox, especially when they aren't the market leaders. So that was just another thing that he talked about there. Now we will move over here to some non-Activision Blizzard acquisition news. And this is Infinity Ward. Now, I guess technically it is Activision Blizzard, but it's not about the acquisition. It's the fact that they're opening up a new studio. So Call of Duty development expands into Spain. It says here, Infinity Ward is excited to announce that they're increasing their presence in Europe to work alongside our friends at Digital Legends in their Barcelona headquarters, and both teams will work side by side on the respective Call of Duty projects, continuing to support Modern Warfare, while friends at Digital Legends prepare for the launch of Call of Duty Warzone Mobile. So interesting, because it's just another studio that could land in the lap of a first-party Xbox studio. And one of the things they do mention here is Call of Duty Warzone Mobile, which we know is a major reason why they want these studios. And then finally, if we are looking for something that truly isn't, even though I just said that, Activision Blizzard news, there is this. 11-Bit Studios has signed a deal to bring its titles over to Xbox Game Pass. Now, 11-Bit Studios is known for smaller type of games like the Frostpunk series, Frostpunk 2. And it was founded in 2010 by former members of CD Projekt and Metropolis Software. And here's their website, and here are some of the games that they do make besides the Frostpunk series, which I believe we're already on Xbox Game Pass, but I think that's one of their more popular series. But you see here, there's a bunch of games I've actually never really heard of before, like these first two here, the Matterage, or however you say it, the Altars, the Invincible, the Frostpunk series here, Moonlighter, which is one I've heard of, Children of Morta, which is a really cool game. I didn't even know it was from these guys. And we go in here. They are smaller games, but they are fun games from the ones that I have played, like Children of Morta and Moonlighter. So there you have it. This is another smaller studio that is going to be bringing over their games, and they signed a deal with Xbox Game Pass. It just means more content coming over to the platform. But I will leave the video there, guys. If you did enjoy this video, hit that thumbs up. If you're new here, hit that subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.
Bye.